Hello, everyone. We are live. It is me and the vivacious Taeler Hendrix. This is Live with Vince and Taeler, or Live with Taeler and Vince, however you want to call it. And we are here to bring you the latest and the greatest in pop culture. How you doing, Taeler? Did you have a good week this week?
It was a rough week this week, Vince. How about you?
Why was it a rough week?
Honestly, I don't want to start off the podcast as a bummer, but it's best to just talk about it and get it, out in the open. I had like a huge allergic reaction on my face earlier this week, and it made me very nervous to even come onto the podcast because people can be quite cruel. And then on top of that, it was the sudden tragic passing of Jay Briscoe. And a lot of people don't know, I actually met the Briscoes as a fan. It was one of the first, non-WWE events I had ever gone to right when I started my career at 17. I was still in high school and I was a fan right before I started. Actually wrestling in the business, and I met them at a Ring of Honor event where I met like Samoa Joe and so many crazy talented people, and the Briscoes were so kind to me. And fast forward, I'm in the business, I'm coming in and out of Ring of Honor in 2009, 2010. They're still incredibly, amazingly kind and helpful. And then, in my major stint at Ring of Honor, they were also incredibly helpful. Jay Briscoe like helped me put together this spot that I was a little nervous to do because I didn't want to hurt Mandy Leon out of my own ignorance with doing a DDT onto a chair. And I wanted to set it up and make sure like her face didn't get smashed in and stuff. And he helped me put all of that together in New York. And I always loved hearing him talk about his family and how like he was such a dad. And, as a girl who didn't really have a dad growing up, like that's so important. And so it was just really, really hard to see that news come out, I guess. So it was a rough week, I think, for a lot of people in many different ways, especially his family.
I never met him, but I mean, everything I've read about him and everything I heard, this was really a great, great human being, and just what a tragic story. Just, man, just very, very, very sad.
Yeah, and it sucks too because like a day or two after this news broke, it was his brother Mark's birthday. So, and knowing that one of his daughters was, in emergency surgery, I just think, a lot of prayers to the family, thoughts, prayers, positive energy. If you can donate, I don't think a lot of people have preparation for something like this because I think as a parent, that's just an unimaginable nightmare that I don't think you would even want to put stock in and think about. So, yeah, and to me, honestly, Vince, I'm tired of seeing the good ones pass away in the business. It just makes the ranks of like the bad, for lack of a better phrase, the bad ranks, that much bigger in numbers. And it's just really sad, like I got hit really hard with Daphne and then, Jay Briscoe. It's kind of, and even Ashley Mazzaro, that was hard, because she stuck up for me when I was being bullied one time. And I just saw how much of a genuinely positive and amazing person. So yeah, this week was really rough. And we also had the passing of music legend David Crosby of Crosby, Stills and Nash.
Right.
So it's a rough week. So I'm hoping, I really got pumped up for this podcast. There's a lot of really great stuff to talk about, but I think it was really, important to put some respect on these people's names while they're with us and posthumously even after.
Well, you know what, Taylor, listen, death is a very, very, very sad thing. However, I got to tell you how I look at it, because you mentioned, losing the good ones. I mean, you mentioned that. I'm telling you, I really do view death as God has a much, much, much greater job for you to do somewhere else. And that's why, to me, it's like, the young ones that go early, well, that may be the reason that while you're on, this planet and you're shining and you're an inspiration to others and you are a guiding light, that, we need to promote you. And now you're going to get you're really going to get the dream job. And that's how I really try to look at it. And,
I love that. I love that, Vince. I really do. That's such a great way to look at it.
I got to be honest with you. I hate flying. And in our business, we fly a lot. Mm-hmm. And my prayer, before every flight was never, God, I pray that you get me there safely. That wasn't my prayer. My prayer always was, God, if it is your will to get me there safely, I pray that you do. But if it's not, in other words, if you have another plan for me, whatever is your will. I mean, I always used to say that prayer. But anyway, let's move on, bro. We have a lot to talk about. Before we do, I want to remind everybody, please, man, feel free to cheer, follow, sub on Twitch or right here on YouTube, man. You can send a super sticker. You could send donations. This is how both myself and Taylor make a living. So we really, really do appreciate that. If you like what we're talking about, you can hit the like button on YouTube. Man, there's a lot of entertainment to talk about this week, and you are the queen. Can I call you the queen of pop culture? That's what I'm going to call you, the queen of pop culture. You know everything there is to know about pop culture. I love the differences between us because you're a woman, I'm a man, you're young, I'm an old goat. So I love when we could talk about the same things and see where we sit on them. So we got a list of a couple of other things. Here's what we're going to discuss, guys.
Yes.
On today's show, we're going to discuss three shows and a movie. We're going to talk about Velma. We're going to talk about The Last of Us. We're going to talk about the new season of Ted Lasso. And we are going to talk about M3GAN. You are the lady, Taylor, so you choose the first topic.
All right, you're going to check out this segue and love it. So when we debuted this podcast for the first time this past week, last Friday, you asked me about some music based off of a comment somebody made in the comment section during the podcast. So I thought, especially since you also at the same time asked me about TV show recommendations for everyone watching, I thought this would be kind of fun to do this, semi-regularly. So I came prepared. Beautiful. So check this out, and you're going to love this little segue. Okay, here we go. So I want to give a music shout out since last week we talked about Blondie, the Talking Heads, the Ramones, the Clash, and all this other stuff. Today I wanted to bring up the Guess Who. I happen to love the Guess Who, and I always kind of whenever I think of Crosby, Stills, and Nash, for whatever reason, I also always think of the Grassroots and the Guess Who. I don't know what that connection is in my brain, but the Guess Who, shout out. I love most of their songs, including their song Laughing. You can go on YouTube after you're done with this podcast and watch these clips from The Joker, where they actually put, movie scenes to that song, and it's so emotional. It invokes like something inside, and I just love that band. I cannot wait to do my own like video package promo with that song. They are so legendary. They do not get enough credit. They are Canada boys, so give them a shout out. And then my TV shout out for this week is actually Ted Lasso. And I laugh thinking about this because I almost said Ted Lasso last week when you asked me about TV shows, and I ended up saying True Blood and Grey's Anatomy. I almost said Ted Lasso. I just finished season 2 recently while I was recovering from surgery, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And why, Vince, I think this is funny is because when I started wrestling at 17, I was in high school. I was so innocent. I didn't swear. I didn't drink or do drugs. I was just like such like an all-around goth good girl on my little skateboard. And, so I came into the business like Ted Lasso. And, fast forward a few years and I'm all of a sudden Roy Kent. Like, huge potty mouth, just like telling you how it is, whether you like it or not, take it or leave it, and just like a grizzled old vet. So I just laugh because I see the comparisons of my personality. I came into wrestling as Ted Lasso, and then the business turned me into Roy Kent. So without further ado,
Ted Lasso, I gotta hit you with a couple of things you just hit me with.
Okay.
Shoot. First of all, you mentioned two bands. One I know very, very, very well because the Guess Who, Burton Cummins and Randy Bachman. Yep. I am a huge Bachman Turner Overdrive fan. I have been for years and years and years. Randy Bachman, of course, was a great force in that band after the Guess Who. But what's the connection with grassroots in pop culture? Can you tell me?
No. What is it? I
I,
do not know everything.
I
So
was a little preoccupied because I was just looking for his real name and I couldn't find it. You watched The Office.
I have, yes.
Creed was in the Grassroots.
Oh wow. I didn't even.
Yes, yes, yes. As a matter of fact, many times on The Office, he's either playing a guitar. There's even one Office parties where he's singing an actual solo hit he had back in the Roost dates. But
Oh
yes,
wow.
Creed was a member of the Grassroots. Maybe somebody in the chat room can throw up his name for me. All right, so you want to start with Ted Lasso?
I do. I am such a huge Ted Lasso fan, and some of the research that I came up with, because I wanted to come at I thought it would be really fun to challenge myself to be more of the analytical person on this podcast. So last week, I was dropping analytics and fact about, like revenues and box office stuff. So I kind of really wanted to continue to do that. And so I did some research after finishing season 2 of Ted Lasso, and boy, was that pulling at the heartstrings, guys. We'll try to keep the spoilers to a minimum, but I mean, it's going to happen. That's what you signed up for on a pop culture podcast. I was so crushed when I found out, Vince, that I don't know if I would have gotten into the series had I known this information. So apparently, prior to even filming season 1 of Ted Lasso, they knew that the overall plan for the franchise of Ted Lasso and the show was that it was a 3-season story arc. I had no idea. I was so emotionally invested in these characters and these stories that I am quite disappointed that season 3 will potentially be the last season for Ted Lasso. And this is one of the biggest hits for Apple TV. So the writers, the showrunner, Jason Sudeikis, and all the people involved, they say that if they do go forward, it will be a completely different sort of vibe with a different sort of story to tell. But they don't even see that happening. They see this as a three-season story arc, and that's it. So I'm totally like crushed because we've been waiting so long. They finished filming Ted Lasso season 2. The finale for season 2 came out in October of 2021. So we've been waiting a long time for season 3. I mean, they started filming season 3 in March of last year, and they finished in November. So I mean, from November to now, there really isn't that much time. However, the last episode from that season, was in October of 2021. So fans of Ted Lasso have been waiting for season 3 for quite a while, and I think the news that this is the last season really caught all of us off guard because it was so good. So the first look that we actually have of Ted Lasso season 3 coming to us for Apple TV and for streaming. They said spring of 2023, so I mean, it could drop anytime now. Spring officially starts March 20th, so we could be looking at a roughly around there if you want to be totally specific about when spring actually starts. But the first look is not what you think. It's not an actual trailer from Apple TV. It is a simple photo, but you know how they say a picture's worth 1,000 words? Well, in this case, it is totally true, Vince. Ted Lasso season 3, the first official look is this standoff between Nate and Ted Lasso, and Nate looks so intense. And in the background, you kind of see Anthony Head's character Rupert, who is the ex-husband of Hannah Waddingford's character Rebecca. And there's just so much to digest in that one photo. So let's do it. Let me hear your thoughts.
Taylor, you're not gonna like this.
Oh no!
There was so much hype around Ted Lasso that I had to watch Ted Lasso. I'm like that, man. If there's a lot of hype around a show, I'm going to watch it.
I feel like you're going to crush my soul right now.
Listen, I watched the first season of Ted Lasso.
Okay, second one's even better.
I started getting into the second one, maybe 2 or 3 episodes in.
I want a sound effect button.
That's when it lost me, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I thought Ted Lasso was a great character. I had no problem with the premise of the show, the idea behind the show. I thought Ted Lasso was a great character. Watched the whole first season, started watching the beginning of the second season. I just felt I felt it was very repetitive, man. I felt the story was always the same. You guys know that, you know, he's a soccer coach, so that's the backdrop. He's over in England, a soccer coach. And I just felt, man, it was very, very, very repetitive to me. I didn't feel like the story was really going anywhere. As a matter of fact, man, I really felt like after a while, the character was getting a little old. I enjoyed it up to a point. I really did. But I felt after that point, it just started being same old, same old. That's how I felt about the show.
I think that's done on purpose because I think maybe I am personally thinking too much into it, but I think this is a social commentary on perception and human behavior. Because a lot of people, for example, when somebody's very upbeat and jolly and genuinely positive and happy, they're realistic, but they're happy and positive and they try to do the best. They try to bring out the best in other people. A lot of times, a lot of people will coin them as fake, phony, repetitive, so forth and so on. And I think maybe a certain part of that is our own projections, because I've seen behaviors like this happen in the wrestling business or in high school and life. And so I think a lot of this is social commentary, because the further into season 2 that you would have gotten, you start to see these not just paradigm shifts between the character dynamics of each individual, but you also see how they play off of each other and the breakdown of social communication and distractions of life they're in. And so I think that's what's going on a lot in season 2 that you need to unpack as the viewer the farther into the episodes you go, because certain characters are having these intense story arcs that mimic real life situations. And maybe that's why they're not as entertaining, because they're not as dramatic. But life isn't always instantly dramatic. Sometimes it really builds up. And I think this is what you see with Nate in particular, which is why the season 3 first look is so important, because you see that face off between the soccer coach of AFC Richmond versus West Ham. Now, Nate, everything that he has, he got because of Ted Lasso, because of Ted Lasso's kindness, because of who Ted Lasso is as a person. He was the one that saw the potential in Nate when Nate was just, prior to Ted Lasso, he was everybody's whipping boy. Basically, for lack of a better term, he was the one that people verbally spit on. He was the butt of people's jokes. And I think over time, when you take so much verbal abuse as a person, and then you start to receive a little bit of kindness and a little bit of promotion and status and so forth, you start to get this, all of a sudden, this huge surge into your ego. I forgot what the psychological term for that is, but that happens quite a bit. We see this in the wrestling business. We see this in the regular business realms of different industries. And I think that that's what makes it so relatable. But because it's so slow, I can see why people would get bored with it. But oftentimes things build up slowly. Like they say, the little things add up into big things. And I think that's where season 3 is going to punch everybody in the face, because the little things that started slowly in season 1 where you barely noticed them, and then catapulted through season 2 halfway through, they're now going to come to a head in season 3, where from the research that I did, we're going to have a minimum of 2 showdowns between AFC Richmond and West Ham, which means 2 major face-offs between Ted Lasso and Nate, where Nate literally owes everything but his to Ted Lasso, but his ego got in the way. He got too cocky, too quick, too fast. He wasn't checked because everybody else was so busy doing everything else. Nobody listened to Coach Beard about what he saw in the background, because Ted Lasso was going through his own, issues and inner turmoils and traumas. And the same thing with Rebecca, who's also going to have a huge story arc in season 3, along with Nate and Rupert, played by Anthony Head. So I don't know if that kind of helps put some context into what you may have not picked up on or what you may have missed since you stopped through season 2. But that is what a lot of people can expect in season 3, along with some new players added to AFC Richmond. You're also going to get the entire main cast coming back for season 3. And then you're also getting Trent Grimm, who's the former journalist from The Independent on the show. He is also coming back and is supposed to supposedly play a significant significant role in season 3's story arc, which they said has an emphasis on Rebecca and Nate. And Ted Lasso is going to kind of take somewhat, not a major backseat, but a small backseat in comparison to Rebecca and Nate.
Well, Taylor, I hear everything you said, but I don't know. Maybe it was because I was a television writer for so long. Man, the audience has a short attention span.
Yes, they do.
And maybe things played out beautifully after 3 seasons, and maybe we kind of start rolling along in the middle of the 2nd season. But like I said, they didn't get me there. You know what I mean? But I also have to be honest, man. I am quick to pull the trigger. Like once I get to the point of, okay, I got it, and they're not moving on, then I'm moving on. And I kind of feel that's what I reached in this show. I think everything you're saying is correct, but I don't think they held my interest long enough to get me there.
And that makes sense because you are right. The attention spans are so small. That's why Instagram Reels are so popular on Instagram. That's why the YouTube Shorts feed is so popular. Gradually, as a society, they want us to have the attention span of a 3-second goldfish, because then we're not going to notice all the stuff happening because we're so focused on getting the news or getting information in 55 seconds or less.
Taylor, did you just call me a goldfish?
I did not. I am much more polite than that.
Okay.
I am the goldfish with how many concussions I have had. It's God. Like,
Speaking of concussions, Taylor, I swear, man, I just saw a clip of this today, and this isn't even on our list. Speaking of concussions, man, there is this new show. I just saw a clip of it today, and it's from, what I'm talking about?
I saw Christopher, who I have so much respect for this man and all the research he's doing, but Christopher Nowinski shared a clip on Twitter of this slap, and it looked like,
God, bro, people will die. People,
yes,
they need to cancel this show now.
His face was like people that, and then he was like twitching.
People will die on this show.
I think the twitching guy that fell over, and his face and he turned like bright red, almost like Violet Beauregard in Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
He was like twitching like this, and his face was like beet red and stuff. It looked like he had a brainstem injury, which, guys, your brainstem is like right here. And if that drops, you start getting all of these neurological issues that affect your communication skills, your physical skills, your deductive reasoning skills, like basic spelling, like all of these different things when the brainstem drops and there's trauma. Oh man, I saw that, Vince. Yeah. I saw that, and I went.
Yeah, that's where I saw a clip of this. It came up on my Twitter, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, seriously? But listen, I want to remind people, man, feel free to send super stickers, donations. We really, really appreciate that. If you like it on YouTube, hit the like button. I'm going to move on to. Go ahead.
Let's do it. Let's do it, Vince. So
I'm going to move on to Velma. Let's move on to Velma, because I hated this. I absolutely hated this, and I will tell you why I hated this.
Let's do it. Go ahead, because I think I agree with you, but let me hear what you have to say.
And this is Mindy Kaling, who's one of the it girls in Hollywood. She was on The Office. What's the character's name on The Office again? I can't even think about it. But
I don't know.
Yeah, Mindy Kaling. I know my daughter is in her mid-20s, and that's her audience, and that's her crowd, and that's people that age love her. I hated this show, bro, because to me, when we talked about the Joker getting pregnant last week.
Yeah.
To me, when something is iconic, leave it alone. Leave it alone when it's iconic. And not only that, guys, let me give you the premise of this show. If you guys remember, Velma was the girl in Scooby Doo. What was the other? Daphne. Daphne was the tall, attractive one. Velma was the smaller, nerdy type. Well, now they have a new cartoon on HBO called Velma, and the backstory is that it was Velma all along, that was the brains behind, you know, that whole Scooby Doo show, and Fred and Daphne and all these people. She was really the brains. So now this is a spin-off cartoon of her solving these murders.
Yeah.
This, to me, man, listen, this is so simple. This is so simple, because what you're doing is you're taking a concept that already existed, and now you're completely turning it on its head. It's almost like, let's be honest. It's almost like, okay, Fred, we're going to take the Flintstones, and we're going to take Fred Flintstone, and Fred Flintstone is now a porno star. Like, it's so, you're just taking something that's legendary and turning it on its head. And to me, this is shock value. And to me, that there's no skill to this. We could take the Pink Panther and all of a sudden turn him into something that he's not, for the shock value of it. And then I'm watching this, and the very first episode, literally 30 seconds in, we have naked girls in the shower, and soap suds are covering their private parts. And I'm like, wait a minute. They're either going to be naked or they're not going to be naked. But what I took away from this is they are trying so hard with a shock value here, and they're really taking a very, very, very easy route, because this was an iconic character, and all you're doing is you're taking this character and you're turning this character down. That's why a show like South Park is so great. These are original characters. This is an original concept. I have no problem with this. But when you take a character that's been around for God knows how many decades, and all of a sudden, you know, hints of, you know, she's a lesbian and all this crap, come on, man. It was too easy for me. It was over the top. And I was like, this ain't a show I'm going to be watching anymore. What about you, Taylor?
Well, first things first, does anybody know the actual rating for Velma? Like, who is the target audience? That's my first question. Do you happen to know that by chance?
I don't know. I would say, you know, it's funny, Taylor, because this is on HBO, I think, right?
I think so.
And I went to watch it on HBO, and I noticed that the subtitles was on it. And the reason why the subtitles was on it, because my daughter was watching it, and she put the subtitles up. So this would be my guess. Mindy Kaling has a following. There's no question about that. 20-something people love her. That's who I think this show is for.
Yeah, but the problem with that is if you don't actually specifically have the rating, like, is this mature audience? Is this PG, PG-13, rated G? Because as you know, the original Scooby Doo renditions, whether you're watching them in the 60s or in the 90s with a pup named Scooby Doo or whatever, or even the Scooby Doo movies of the early 2000s, they all had a younger, much younger audience. So for me, I was very disappointed when I started seeing stuff about the show come out before it officially debuted. I didn't like Mindy Kaling's response to people's critiques of it. You know, it's basically the same argument over and over in different realms of pop culture or politics or whatever. If you don't agree with something, you're automatically a bigot. You're this, you're that, and the other.
What were some of her comments, Taylor? I'm interested in hearing those. I didn't see those.
She was basically lashing out back at the people that were not happy about Velma openly being a lesbian on the show. And to be fair, there's always been rumors about Velma's sexuality. And I think that they could have stayed just rumors, because Velma's character was nerdy, insecure, but also confident at the same time in who she was. And I feel like that's so much more powerful than showing, you know, girl on girl intimacy, you know, especially with children, in my opinion. Again, this is an opinion. It's not a fact. I think people conflate opinion and fact way too much these days because they're emotional instead of logical. So for me, I think Velma could have had her own standalone show without doing some of the choices that they did, especially if it's geared towards children. There seems to be a lot of adult ideas nowadays, even more so than before. Because I knew like Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob, all these other shows that kids like me and the kids after me grew up on. It had adult content in it, but it wasn't bashing us over the heads with it.
Right. I agree.
And
I agree.
you know, and I think it made it entertaining for the adults instead of all the adults nowadays that are going crazy because they hear Coco Melon 23 out of 24 hours a day, right?
Yeah.
So at least, you know, growing up as a kid in the 90s, you know, I feel like my parent didn't go completely insane with what I was choosing to watch, like Scooby Doo, SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Yogilla Gorilla, or Josie and the Pussycats, or whatever, like all these different renditions of Scooby Doo with a different animal and different band members, basically. So for me, this Velma, I was very curious to see if it was actually geared towards people that were kids in the 90s, you know, that grew up watching the original Scooby Doos before they went to bed, or if this was geared towards actual children. Because I know that they, in the commercials for it, they have like a girl falling out of a trash can, and that's the murder. And from what you're telling me about a shower scene with a bunch of girls and suds are coming, that is so overly suggestive that I don't think, as me as a person, if I had a young child, I wouldn't want them to watch that. Just like I don't necessarily think Family Guy is for little kids. But if you're a teenager and you're an adult, it's great. You know, it's great to see an adult version of, you know, content you grew up with. Like, that's cool, whatever. But I think that it could have been done in a very different way without having to change so much to fit different agendas. Like, I don't see why Daphne had to change. I don't see why Shaggy wasn't really in it. All the clips I saw, there was no Scooby-Doo at all. And like, if Velma was always the brains behind the machine, that's great, because everybody needs a brain to make something work, right? But then you need other people that have other skills to help the brain successfully bring the vision to life, i.e. Fred, Daphne, Shaggy, Scooby. Together they were a cohesive unit that made the you know, the gang work, you know, solving mysteries and solving crimes and all this other stuff, and kind of showing kids back then that, you know, monsters a lot of times are really humans wearing a mask, and sometimes in public we all wear a mask. So don't be fearful of monsters. Learn to read people for who they are instead of who you want them to be. I think that's a great life lesson. I don't think they're going to be having those same kinds of meaningful lessons in the modern presentation of Velma. And to her specific tweets, I cannot quote them off the top of my head because goldfish, but they are on Google for you to find. When it happened, I read articles of people breaking it down. You know, it was all over, you know, things like BuzzFeed and IGN and Nerdist and all these other things. So, I mean, it's out there for anyone who wants to read them. But if I was a parent, I don't think this is a show I would want my kids to be watching. That's for sure. And I think as a parent, you really have to really vet the stuff these days.
Yeah. Lion Ratton in the chat room said that the show is rated TV MA. So it is rated for audiences. So
that makes it okay. So I don't think it excuses the legacy that they're changing of Scooby-Doo. But I think it makes it a little bit more palatable knowing it's not geared towards young little kids.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, what if a parent is so busy and they don't know that it's rated TVMA? What if they didn't see that headline? You know what I mean? And then they have their kid watching it. But I guess that all comes down to personal parenting choices as well. But yeah, I feel like you could have done something different, and I don't know. I'm trying to be nice, but I'm not for it.
I'm not trying to be nice. It's too easy, man. You could take any iconic character, completely turn that character upside down and make it shocking, which is all they've done. And you know, to me, man, you know, like, you know, you named a lot of those shows that you watch, you know, SpongeBob, you know, all original content. Anybody could do this. Like I said, man, you could take Inspector Gadget, and he's on this series, he's a pervert. I mean, you know, I didn't like this. Let's move on. What do you want to hit next?
Okay, I want to segue into The Last of Us because I did a lot of research on this today. So I kind of want to dive into this and kind of make it like the more of the main focus, because I think it's going to appeal to a wider audience, especially with its popularity. So just for a point of reference, I was very curious about the ratings of certain things, because since we first talked about Ted Lasso, just to give you some context, Ted Lasso is rated a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. And I don't always agree with Rotten Tomatoes, especially of late, but I just want to emphasize how hard that actually is to do, to receive a 95% rating. And I think that's on average, because their second season was actually rated even higher than their first. And then if you round it out, it's roughly a 95. And so I started looking at some other ratings from some other really popular shows. Like, for example, The Walking Dead has a 79% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Grey's Anatomy, 84. True Blood, only a 68%, which I figured you would be happy about based on last week. 87% for Sons of Anarchy and 89% for Game of Thrones. So all of a sudden you have a show like a happy-go-lucky, struggling but positive Ted Lasso and the AFC Richmond with a 95% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, the only other two of all of the options that I Googled for them, there was only two that compared to Ted Lasso's rating, and that was Netflix's Squid Game, which also came in at 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then there was The Last of Us, which came in at a 99% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That is crazy good. Now, here's the thing, though. I think there should be a little bit of leeway or a grain of salt here, because obviously it's in its infancy. It's in its first season. It hasn't had a chance quite yet to fully stretch its wings, so to speak, and to make mistakes or good choices yet, like some of these other shows that have multiple seasons. But with that being said, I mean, 99% is huge. It was originally 94 and it jumped up all the way to 99. So I'm really excited for us to talk about it. They also got a 9 out of 10 on IGN.com, 9.4 out of 10 on IMDb, and a 4.8 out of 5 for Google reviews.
I gotta throw you a big time out here.
Go ahead.
I
was expecting it.
These are comic book nerds, the video game nerds. This is based on a video game, bro. This literally is like AEW fans putting over a horrible product.
I was going to get to that. Yeah.
Ted Lasso doesn't have it wasn't a video game before. This was a video game, and in that video game world, just because this show is based on a video game, they are going to put it over. Because I watched freaking Jeff, like let me address Jeff Lane right now. like I have nothing better to do than for Jeff Lane, the video game nerd, to tell me what shows I have to watch. Okay, but because of Jeff Lane, everybody's watching this show. Blah 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 blah. So I had to watch this show, The Last of Us. Okay, this is a 1,000% ripoff of The Walking Dead. 1,000%, bro.
I was going to say that.
Oh, bro, these people have this fungus and they're dying this fungus, and now it's the apocalypse, and now the people with the fungus are killing. Give me a freaking break. I watch The Walking Dead. I don't need to watch a 1,000% ripoff of The Walking Dead. But here's what's going to happen, Taylor. I'll tell you right now. It's the video game community, and they are gonna put this show over to the moon. And I am telling you, if you watch The Walking Dead, bro, if you liked it, great, then watch this. I watched The Walking Dead because everybody watched The Walking Dead, so I had to see what it was all about. I don't need to watch this show. I've seen it already. That was my takeaway on the show.
Okay, I think I agree and disagree, and here's why. So I agree that this is a television series based off of a major video game. That's 100% correct, and it does have an extremely loyal following. Now, here's where I disagree. because if the show was not good in their minds, they would have torn it to shreds and said HBO should have left it alone. Just like Paramount Plus and a couple other companies that tried to recreate a video game into a movie and or television, and it got torn to shreds and they hated it. So that's why I think I agree and disagree with what you said, because it's a double-edged sword. And here's a good example, in my opinion. I am a huge Lord of the Rings fan. Okay, I grew up where Tolkien was the lifeblood. Okay, you know, that Tolkien, Godzilla, etc. Like that's what I grew up with. Okay, I grew up watching the 1970s animated Lord of the Rings, for crying out loud. So like we were very much Tolkien. All right, I think this year for Christmas I got my mother a Tolkien cookbook I didn't even know existed until this Christmas. You know, so with that being said, I was so stoked for Amazon's The Rings of Power. And I cannot tell you how disappointed I was. I didn't even make it through the first episode. I was so disappointed, and so many diehard, true, legit, real Tolkien fans all felt the exact same way I did. We all felt that it was like a huge punch in the face to Tolkien. Like it was so not his style. It was not his style of writing. It was not his creative attention to detail, and it was not true to his values as the original writer and creator of this world with their own languages, like real legit languages. It was just such a like it spit in the face of all the real Tolkien fans. Okay, and so I feel that if HBO had done dirty The Last of Us, all of these comic book fans would not be rating it as high as they did. Now, where I agree with you, Vince, is I actually wrote this down. Where is it? Oh yeah, right here. People can't read that, but I said The Last of Us is like if The Walking Dead, The Purge, and Resident Evil had a baby.
Yeah, I've seen it, man. I've seen it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I've seen it. I didn't play the video game. I'm not a fan of the video game, so I'm watching this as a I'm watching this as a virgin. And
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm not watching episode 2. That's it. I got it. I had enough of that. I'm moving on.
I did read what a lot of the game players, the video gamers actually said about this in the reviews, and they said a lot of the same stuff. They said this was an actual video game adaptation that was worthy of being watched, and they gave a lot of kudos to HBO for staying true to the source material while also making it new and entertaining and keeping veteran video game players of The Last of Us on their toes with respectful changes to the stories that added more depth and dimension to the characters. And they also applauded HBO for having some of the original creators and visionaries behind the video game The Last of Us to actually come and work on the television series with them to keep a sense of continuity and truth to the actual characters. So I thought that was actually a really good call by HBO, because if you're going to do something, you should want to do it right with also a little bit of originality without being insulting. So it seems like a lot of the video game players actually felt that HBO really did do that. For those of you that don't know, The Last of Us is based off of a very popular video game by the same name, and it chronicles the journey of Joel and Ellie, who are basically on this survival mission to get Ellie out of this military, maritime sort of quarantine camp, and it turns into this across America journey where they're trying to fight off other survivors who are fighting other survivors for food and necessities and things like that, and simply because they're violent. And also these mutated monsters after this outbreak, and I think it's about 20 years or something after the outbreak. So that's kind of why you see why Vince and I compare this to, you know, The Walking Dead meets The Purge meets Resident Evil, kind of all into this neat package called The Last of Us. And that's basically what it is. I will say a lot of people really did think that Nick Offerman, Gabriel Luna, and Pedro Pascal, and Bella Ramsey all have done a really good job embodying the characters from the video game. And so I'm curious to see it. I have not actually seen it yet. I've only seen clips and trailers and then the comparisons between the series and the video game. And I looked at a lot of data from the video game to see if I personally could see the influence from the people behind the video game in the actual series.
Listen, I'm using, I wasn't not paying attention to you, Taylor. I was confirming that this is really Jeff Lane on here. That's what I was doing on my phone. I said, is this really you? He said yes. So now I know that it's really him. I can cut a promo on him. Now, I want to tell you guys, if you donate or super sticker to support us, support this show, I will bring your comment up here just like I am Jeff's. Here's the problem with Jeff Lane. She is dead. Let me put my Jeff Lane hat on here.
Oh no!
She is dead on. Video games fans would destroy something if it's not faithful to the game. They don't just put adaptions over because it's from a game. Let me explain something to Jeff Lane. Jeff Lane knows Jeff. I don't play video games. He knows I don't play. He knows my time is very valuable, Taylor. He knows I'm very, very busy. Why would he make me watch this show? Why would he knows this is what I'm going to say about the show. Why would he make me watch this show?
Probably for the entertainment value of seeing you in your truest form.
And here's the killer, Taylor. Here's the killer. I swear, here's the killer. Taylor, I'm the guy exactly what you said. I take my remote like this every day because, I could talk into my remote. And here's what I say, Taylor. YouTube. So now it brings up YouTube, and if the clip is over 5 minutes, it's out. I'm not watching anything over 5 minutes. It's out. The thing with this is, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm an hour in and out of this show. I'll watch this show for an hour, right? So I start watching this show, Taylor, and I pause it to see how much time is left because I can't wait for it to end. So I pause it to see how much time is left. This was an hour and 38 minutes.
Oh, yeah. They said the first episode to kick everything in was about an hour and 30 total. Yeah, I did read that the first episode is longer than the rest. Yeah.
I know. Okay, listen, Taylor. We're not on a good run here. I've given 3 thumbs downs today. 3. What is the next topic? Is this going to be the one thumbs up? What do we have left?
All right. Next up on the docket is M3GAN, but I do want to say first and foremost, I'm glad I got the Jeff Lane seal of approval since I make his life hell with my lack of, equipment and tech savviness. I am so terrible. I can barely download. Okay. So I'm glad I got the thumbs up from Jeff. Guys, for real, he is an unsung hero behind the scenes of the brand because I am always having issues. You guys heard the audio last week. Okay.
Hero or not, I was calling him every name in the book on my couch last night. Okay. I've got to give. I don't want to be Mr. Negative. See, people think I only ripped the WWE. No, I just ripped Velma, Last of Us, and I didn't rip Ted Lasso. Is not at the point of me ripping. The other 2 shows I'll rip. No. Ted Lasso is not a horrible show. It just didn't move fast enough for me. So I would almost put that somewhere in the middle. But I'm dying to give something a thumbs up. So what do we got left?
Okay, we have one of the newer horror movies that came out in 2023. I'm surprised about the amount of, and then also simultaneously the lack thereof for buzz on this, but here we go. M3GAN is rated a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, so for a film that's actually really darn good, especially without a certain agenda involved with it. And it got it got a 6.6 on IMDb.
Can I address somebody in this room, Taylor? I hate to interrupt you. Mike Martin, this TV movie review deal is boring though. Mike, bro, turn it off, bro. Go do something else. If you're bored, bro, why are you watching it? Seriously, bro. If you're that bored with this show, then go watch something else. Dope. All right, go ahead, Taylor. I'm sorry.
Maybe they want more wrestling involved. There's a lot of similarities that I could do. Believe me. You guys aren't ready for it, though.
More wrestling will make this show better. Oh, yeah, bro. All right, go ahead, Taylor. I apologize, Taylor.
It's all all good. Everybody is entitled to an opinion, believe me. Believe you me. Okay, so for M3GAN, I'm really excited to see this. Actually, I have not seen it yet, but I've worked out all the data, and it's really really cool to see that this is actually it's still in the top 5 in the domestic box office, believe it or not. They and what's so cool about this movie for everybody listening is that the expectations for the profit on this movie were so low by Hollywood standards. Like they gave an estimation that this movie would only earn about 17 to 20 million dollars, and that may sound like a lot of money, but for Hollywood and for a major theatrical release, that's actually like chump change. And it overperformed, I think, much to the delight of everybody involved with it. So much so that they already have a sequel in the works that will come out in, I think, they said January 17th of 2025. There's going to be M3GAN 2.0. But so for a breakdown here, M3GAN is a horror movie based off of this android that a robotics scientist creates to be the pal of children, basically like the perfect sort of pal, the perfect pal, almost like a Polly Pocket, but like a big android best friend for kids. And it's also supposed to be like a helpful watching tool for parents, so they can trust the person that's around their kid and also get useful information about their kid and keep eyes on their kid and so forth, keep them out of trouble, positive influences so they never feel lonely, so forth and so on. Insert artificial intelligence. Things don't exactly go the right way. You got overprotection of the child and kind of like this horror movie-esque social commentary, which I think is very, very interesting because The Last of Us is actually quite a possible scenario, as is M3GAN. And then obviously Ted Lasso is actually based off of a real character from soccer. So I think the realism of this episode is not boring and is in fact actually factual and could actually happen. Because The Last of Us actually happens in science with this certain fungus that literally makes ants mutate and kill themselves. And that could easily happen to humans. I mean, look at all the stuff that's happened in modern society, right? And then you have the emergence of artificial intelligence with all the warnings from people like Elon Musk about how all of these robots will not have empathy and compassion towards humankind. They're going to learn and adapt way faster than humankind. And even though the intention is good, the outcome will ultimately be bad, according to a lot of people. And people don't care. They're still going forward with all different kinds of artificial intelligence, which are going to take over jobs from all kinds of sectors and people all over the world. And there's no guarantee that they won't learn to the point where they outdo humanity and try to do inhumanity. So I think that there's a lot of realism and social commentary. And I think that's what makes M3GAN so good, is because this is actually possible. Like as a former preschool teacher, I could see modern society having these perfect pals for little kids in preschools and all these other things, collecting data, watching out for the kids and all this other stuff. And with so much power being taken away from parents in modern society, I definitely feel like M3GAN is possible. Like, I think that's the scariest part about M3GAN. What are your thoughts?
I wish Jeff Lane would have had one of these dolls, because last night I would have summoned the doll to choke him to death. But okay, listen, M3GAN. First of all, I got to say this, Taylor. I've watched a lot of clips of this. I am too cheap to go to the movies these days. Okay, yeah. I mean, the price of the movies is ridiculous. You know it's going to come on streaming shortly. So, yeah. However, by watching all these all the clips, I was almost enticed to actually go to the movie theater and see it, which you know, especially for a horror movie. I never go see horror movies in a movie theater because they're always yeah, no, I don't. I don't.
That is my bread and butter. I am such a huge horror movie fan. I think that's why Shotzi Blackheart and I got along so well. I love horror films.
In the movie theater, I'll watch them at home. I don't like going to the movies because it's never worth the money to me to go see a horror movie in the movie theater. But I saw enough clips of this that was enticing me to go see this movie. Doing a lot of research about this. It's really unique because they are really combining the technology as they're using A1 and an actual human being. So it's the combination of a little girl actress and AI that is really making M3GAN look strangely real. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
strangely real. And I'm giving this a thumbs up. I really am giving this a thumbs up. It's like I said, man. It's a new technology. It's a new way of movie making where you're combining A1 and actual actors. In this case, an actress. It looks very realistic. It looks very, very creepy. Now, I'm sure when you watch the movie and we get into the story, it's going to be the typical Chucky story. I'm sure that's what it will be, but definitely interesting enough for me to want to see it.
I do want to see it. They called it a Model 3 generative android, or M3GAN. That's where they came up with the name. I think it's really, really cool. I think it's a very cool concept because of the possibility that it could end up being real, especially with all the advancements that they've had in AI, where they can take care of the elderly now. They can run and hop and jump and skip and do all of these things that humans can do, except better now. Like, I think that this is actually possible. And to me, that's why it's scary. Like, I think one of the scariest things in the world besides nuclear war is AI, because there's no way to control it once they get past a certain level of intelligence. So that could definitely be very scary. So to me, I think that's what's going to make this movie what it is. And I mean, a lot of people, I agree with you, going to the movies and paying all that money when you could buy several items of groceries, it's kind of hard to rationalize. But when I was younger and it wasn't as expensive, I felt like you were paying for the experience, so I didn't mind it. But now with one ticket being like $25 and it's not even IMAX level, it's like, what? Yeah, I think it also is worthy to note that M3GAN is still in the top 5 in the domestic box office, and they weren't even released in as many theaters as the others in the top 5. So I thought that was really cool. Domestically, they earned $61.6 million domestic in the box office so far.
Yeah.
And total with international, they did about 38.6. So that's roughly $100.2 million when they originally were only estimated to earn between 17 and 20 million.
Wow, that's tremendous.
So
that is tremendous.
Yeah. I think, like, considering the fact that a lot of people don't realize that sometimes this stuff can be a write-off, especially if you lose your behind. But a lot of times to make a profit, you need to make actually double what you use to make the movie and market the movie. You have to make a little over double to even make an actual good profit, because you have to figure in they actually pay taxes on the films and all the different things that go along with the making of the film, plus all of the marketing, which is, depending on the movie, millions of dollars just in that alone. So that's crazy. They were like, oh, you have limiting expectations of us? That's funny. Watch us go. Like, that's really, really cool. So so far $100.2 million when they were estimated to make.
We gotta be fair too, though.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, Taylor. Obviously, in 2023, movies are not being released like they were 10 years ago. Yeah. So I think it's almost like people really want to go to the movies because there's such a lack of movies coming out. Yeah. So, if this were 10 years ago, I don't know if it would have been making the same money, but good for them that it was so inexpensive to produce. I got to tell you this, I'm going to throw this in there as a bonus. A lot of times people tell me, Vince, you need to watch. And I'm always like, I'm not into that. I don't want to watch it. Like, Cuckoo Jeff Lane, for some reason, thought I was going to like this. I don't know. But one of those movies that I really didn't want to see was Top Gun Maverick. Did you see this?
Oh, it was so good. I think they had just enough nostalgia without using it as a crutch. And like, the story actually had meaning and simplicity and also so much realism. I think it was so well done.
I got to tell you, me and my wife were looking for something to watch on Saturday night. So I said, what the hell? And I put it on. Great movie. Absolutely great movie. I hadn't seen the original in a long time, but from what I can remember about the original, I think this was better than the original. And like I said, this was a movie that I really I really didn't want to see, but I am glad I saw it. What a great movie. I think it's on Paramount Plus right now.
That is definitely a great choice. And as far as movies 10 years ago versus now and how they make money, obviously at the onset of the we saw this different approach to theatrical releases where they were doing that hybrid release strategy of streaming and theater. But statistically speaking, horror movies have always done relatively well compared to the budget they actually spend on them. Like they spend way more money doing like a Marvel film or like Avatar or Star Wars than they actually do making a horror franchise. And so they actually usually make money, which is really, really cool considering they're my favorite genre. I mean, you take a look at The Conjuring, Insidious, or anything that Blumhouse and James Wan touch, like it turns to gold and it makes money. So it's really cool to also see this kind of niche of, market continue to grow even when less people are going to the theaters.
Yeah. All right, Taylor, listen, tell everybody what is going on with you. You got a lot going on. You're podcasting, you're writing. Let everybody know what's going on with you, where they can follow you.
All right, everybody. You can catch me here live every single Friday with Vince Russo for the Brand Live, where we talk about all kinds of things, pop culture, including for you sticklers. We will add wrestling in there, obviously. You can catch me on my YouTube channel for various different segments like Q&A Wednesdays, where I answer questions from you, the fans. And I also do the same thing on my podcast. My YouTube channel is youtube.com/Taeler Hendrix. And so definitely hit the subscribe button, thumbs up, and then comment on my Q&A Wednesday videos for your chance to be featured on my podcast, Talks with Taeler Hendrix, which airs every Tuesday, where I will answer your questions, including popular segments like things I feel you should know by the time you're 30, Fun Fact Fridays, Motivation Mondays, and so much more. You can also find me on social media with @Taeler_Hendrix on Twitter and @Taeler Hendrix ROH on Instagram. Ring of Hendrix, that's true. Sorry, they're not the same. There was a fake me on each of those platforms before the real me was, so that's a real pain in the butt. You can also find all 4 of my children's books available on Amazon for 99 cents each. And you can feel free to just type my name in there and they will come right up. It's Not Easy Being a Sloth, A Fish with a Wish is Trish, Nosy Rosie, and The Secret Surprise. And most recently, my favorite, The Hopeful Spider. The Hopeful Spider and It's Not Easy Being a Sloth created the opportunity for me to be an Amazon Top 100 author. So that is all the stuff currently going on with me. Thank you so much, Vince, for having me again this week.
Oh, absolutely. And again, guys, if you enjoyed the show, just please hit the like button. It helps us with the algorithm and all that good stuff. Of course, man, you could check everything out on RussoBrand.com, patreon.com/Russo TWC for Live with Vince and Taylor, or Taylor and Vince. We'll see you next week.